Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fusion 360 Live. I am Tyler Kirkara, and I am a tech specialist here on the Fusion 360 team. And this is my second ever live stream, but my first from my home. Like many of you, I'm sure, I'm now working from home, which is bittersweet, but here we are today. So, what are we going to be talking about? 3D sketching. I don't know if any of you have seen the recent blog posts or have seen the actual update inside of Fusion, but we've gone through and renovated the 3D sketching space. So I have a pretty cool project for us to work on. But first, let's start at where you could have seen that update. So our Fusion 360 blog is awesome. Not only do you get to see the most current updates, a description of what they are, little animations and kind of stories around them, but you get a lot of other content related to Fusion 360. I highly suggest, if you haven't seen it before, go and visit it. It's a good way to stay connected. But this is the best way I have seen it described, intuitive 3D sketching. And that's what I'm hoping to exemplify to you guys today. It is just so easy to use, and it just makes sense. The way that it was before, you would have to draw a sketch and grab points and use the move tool to kind of move these points in different positions in 3D space. Oh my goodness, has it changed? So I hope you're excited to see it. We'll jump right into Fusion, and I'm just going to give an example of how it's used to start. So it's as simple as just pulling up a 2D sketch, selecting a plane as you normally would, but on your sketch palette here, you have something called 3D Sketch. And this necessarily isn't new. This used to be here before too, but we'll want to make sure that this is engaged or selected. From here, I'm going to start drawing lines, and that looks a little bit different. So they'll refer to this as that triad. You get a bunch of different modifier handles here where at this point now you can reposition these planes super easily. And precisely too, you see I have that input here for the degree rotation. At any point I want to go through and reset this triad orientation, I can say reset, and boom, we're back to normal. So I'm going to start by just drawing a couple lines in this Y direction here. One more. And the reason why I wanted to show this is kind of outside of what my demonstration is going to show today, but definitely a good kind of Kickstarter to get you thinking about how you can use this 3D sketching tool, where, of course, this part previously would be a single sketch, but now I can go in and add these surfaces or these like lofted paths. Maybe this is going to be a vase or some other complex shape where each one of these would be an individual plane before and a sketch on each one of those planes. Now is all just consolidated into a single sketch, which, how awesome is that? So I'm going to say finish sketch. I'm going to go to my lofting tool and then just select all of those profiles that I want to loft into. And in 2 different tools, I've created this really complex shape where this would have been like 5 different construction planes before and 5 different sketches. Now it's just these nice 2 neat options here in the bottom left corner. So just a good example of, again, how this 3D sketching tool works. Another cool thing that I've seen, and sorry for this being in Microsoft Word, not the best presentation, but these drop bars for a road bike. I'm very partial to bicycling, so any project I see in relation to that gets me really excited. But were the exact same thing. This would be a really complex assembly of sketches and offset planes. Now can be done in literally a single sketch. So really, really cool. And again, that's what we're going to be showing here in this presentation. Before I get started, I did want to shout out Christian Ramirez Designs. He's the one who let me borrow this mesh that we're going to be working with today. He says he posts all of his information on his Instagram account. So if you guys have any questions about where you can access this mesh, please support him. So going back into Fusion here, I'm going to close what we had there and open up a new design. What we're going to be putting together, you might have seen in the thumbnail and the title, is going to be a tubular front bumper for a Polaris RZR, which is like a side-by-side or a UTV. I work out here in Denver, and we are very well connected to the outdoor community, whether that's, again, cycling or motorcycles or other off-road vehicles. So again, any project that I can grow closer to that makes me really, really happy. So that's kind of why I picked this here today. I've shown this to a couple customers, and I work with a lot of customers who are in a similar industry outside of Colorado, just across the world, and they've shown a lot of excitement with this. 3D scans are pretty easy to come by, and 3D scanning tools are becoming a lot more affordable. And people have a lot of questions as to, like, how can I use those scans? How can I make use of this really awesome data, this really accurate data that I've created? And this is one workflow. I'm going to start by just saving this project. I'm going to say razor bumper. Good. And this is the scan that we're going to be using and referencing for this design. Here we are. So this is the front end of a Polaris Razor. It's kind of like an ATV if you're not familiar with that, but you get a seat and a steering wheel. They're a whole lot of fun. I went out this summer to Breckenridge and drove one of these through the mountains, and it was honestly some of the most fun I've ever had. And anything with wheels, they're a blast. So if you ever have a chance to drive one, I highly recommend it. But here we are. So we have this really beautiful design, but how do we use this, right? This isn't a B-rep surface. This is a mesh model. So it's not as easily manipulated or edited as, well, a B-rep surface, something that you would be creating inside of a CAD software. So one way to use this geometry is just for reference. And that's what's kind of going to unfold and reveal itself as we start designing this here today. I am literally just going to be using this for a reference to build around. Some of the shortcuts I took before actually inserting this into space, I oriented it appropriately so it's fit around the origin. Everything is square and level, so I spared you guys of that for this video, but it's as simple as just using the Move Copy tool, selecting that body and kind of rotating it around, just ensuring that everything is centered. And when you're going through and mirroring things and even patterning things, it just makes it that much easier to be able to reference that origin. So, but yeah, let's get started with the design here. The first thing I'd like to do is actually insert a sketch that I made, and admittedly, it's not the most attractive sketch, but it is precise. And sometimes that can be an issue with these mesh models, as yes, they're accurate, but if you're looking for like precise measuring points or like a through hole dimension for like a bolt to be mounted on, that might not be the case. So what I did is I got those precise dimensions and I made a paper sketch out of that, and I took a picture of it, and now I have it inserted into Fusion 360. And what this is going to be is kind of like the base connector for this entire front bumper. So this is what's going to be bolted to the front end of that Polaris Razor, and then it's also going to be what's mounting the like tubular bumper too. So let's calibrate this. Let's get this to scale. First thing I'd like to do is actually change my document settings here and make sure that we're in inches, not millimeters. And I'm going to go through and open up my canvas here, calibrate, then select between these 2 points that I have drawn in my sketch. And yep, it looks like it's not to scale. So let's type in 5 for 5 inches. And as easy as that, now I realize that this is perfect to scale. I also want to put this in place for where it's actually going to be on my design. So let's center this over this mounting point here. I'll rotate it a little bit. It doesn't look super straight. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to hide this mesh again because I don't need that at the moment. But let's start actually designing this base mount here. So I'm going to create a sketch and select that same plane that I dropped this canvas onto. I love using construction lines, so that is the first thing I'm going to start out with is a construction line. And I'm just going to start outlining roughly this part. And a good rule of thumb, I mean, if you have a symmetrical part, why do twice the work when it's already symmetrical? So let's just draw half of it here. Let's add some dimensions to this, add some more precision to it. Let's remove that. Starting to look pretty good so far. Okay. I know this is supposed to be 1/2 inch. Let's make sure we get this position appropriate too. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen it too, installing these dimensions here or inputting the value for these dimensions, not only can you just put in that dimension, but you can also put in an equation or reference other dimensions. So instead of having to have a calculator sitting next to you, yeah, just put a division symbol. I'm measuring to the center line instead of the center of this other through hole. So I'm just going to divide it by 2. Gives me exactly what I want. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to say finish sketch. And then I'm also going to, no, let's go back into this. I want to mirror this. So select my sketch lines, that center line, mirror it. There we go. Ideally, we just saved a few seconds of work having to draw 2 of these. And then I think I'm going to be using 1/4 inch material for this. That looks pretty good. I'm going to turn on my scan again and see how this measures up. So I'm not too worried about these through holes here lining up with these bolts. I already went through and measured this in reality, and I know that these are in the perfect position. But what I am realizing is that where it's located now, it might be making contact with the top of this mesh, or I should say the top of the bodywork on the actual front side of this Polaris razor. So I'm going to go back into my sketch and maybe make some changes to this. I'm going to say move these mounts up a little bit, and then also make the top of this a little bit shorter. I realized that I didn't add a dimension here as well, so I want to lock that angle in. And let's see, I'm going to change the overall length of this as well to 2.75. From here, I can just drag this into position where those through holes are lining up. When I press finish, it goes through and does that update. And that looks a lot better. That clearance is much better. I'm not making contact with this kind of plastic bodywork on the top here. I'm not making contact on the bottom or the sides. I'm happy with that. Let's leave it where it is. You might see this giant hook pulling through the front of it too. That's going to be coming off with the mounting of this front bumper, so I'm not going to worry about that either for now. I'd like to add some other touches to this. We're going to go through and maybe fillet these corners. Good. And I will have to apologize. Working from home, I didn't have the chance to bring my Space Mouse home, so my rotations in this might be a little bit clunky. Usually it's nice and smooth, but yeah. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that base mount is finished. So now we get to go to the exciting part. We get to start talking about 3D sketching. So I want to start by creating an offset plane for where the center of my tubular bumper is going to start. And I just remember this one from memory. I know this has to be 1.75 inches off of that origin. Where that's going to put me is in between the center of this through hole and this side here. So it's going to mark me kind of right in this spot. That looks good. Now I am going to begin my sketch on that plane. And I want to do a couple things here. I want to project the geometry of this through hole. Okay, perfect. Because what I'd like to do is have that kind of tubular front bumper come out from the center of this. I'd like the center of both of those circles or cylinders to be in that same spot. And then I might actually try this as well, this slice sketch. Because when I'm looking at this sketch from the side here, there's a lot of material in front of it. It's really hard to see. So this is something I often like to do, is do this slice sketch, and that just cuts everything from your vision to that plane out and makes it a little bit easier to start designing or start creating. So I am going to start with a line here, and I would like that to be the center, just like I said before. And I would like this to reach out past this bodywork and also follow some of the body lines as well, right? I think that that's going to convey a pretty like cool aesthetic design rather than just having something coming out at like 90 degrees or some arbitrary angle. I'd like this to kind of follow this first body line here. And I think that position will be pretty good. I'm going to say 3.5 inches. And that's a good start. I'm going to go through here and unslice my sketch and just get a perspective of what I've done. That is going to be my first tubular piece, kind of reaching out. And yeah, I'm not mad about that. That looks great. And this is kind of like conceptual design process too, right? Like I haven't even sketched anything out. In a lot of cases, I like doing this instead. Like instead of doing a rough sketch on a piece of paper, in some cases, this is even quicker for me to just jump into a CAD software and not only have that like conceptual model built, but like have a 3D model behind it that conveys, in a lot of cases, a lot more than a sketch. And in my case, I'm not the best sketcher. I can get to that point generally a lot quicker, and it looks a lot more accurate. So there might be some imprecision to this design here, but again, it's supposed to be more conceptual, to be like, okay, this is going to work. This is going to look good. This is going to clear body pieces or body panels. So yeah, let's keep going with that. So as I said before, if we're going to be working on a 3D sketch, we have to turn the 3D sketch on. So here we are. And when I select the line tool now, you see I have that triad down there, and I'm going to select my first point that I want to start building from. And if I was working in that same plane, of course, all I could do is, well, work in that same plane. But in this case, what I'd really like to do is kind of bring this line out to the side here and start kind of building in that outward angle. So just by tapping Alt on the keyboard, you can see this plane here has now changed from orange to blue, saying that it's selected. And I'm going to keep tapping it a couple times so you can see that action happening. Every time I press Alt, it selects that plane that I can begin sketching on. So I want this front plane here. And okay, I'm pointing out at that angle. That looks good. I'd also like this to kind of bend forward a little bit. So I'm going to use one of these modifier handles and maybe change that to like 15 degrees and bring it up to, let's say, that point. Actually, I'm going to take a step back. Try that again. Looks good. Maybe not 15 degrees. Maybe we'll do something closer to like 10 degrees. Okay, actually, I like that a lot more. And I'm going to move back to this orthographic view here, and maybe I'll mark this point. Okay, so I'm going to go to my top view here and make sure that that's clearing body panels. Okay, that looks pretty good actually. I'm not going to be making contact with anything there. Go back to my front view. The next shape, I'd like to kind of follow the path of this grill here. And I'd also like to bend it back into that bodywork again. So where I bent forward before, I'd like to bend back a little bit and follow that line with the bumper. Let's see. That looks a little bit more accurate. Good. I'm still on that appropriate plane. And let's go maybe in this area here. I'm going to select this here and something like that. Say that that's done for now. Let's give that a second. And yeah, actually, I like that a lot. That looks pretty good. And of course, there's going to be some material here. It's not going to be this just line that I have to worry about making contact with. It's going to be, I'm thinking probably like a 3/4 inch or an inch diameter tube. So we'll check that in a second and make sure that that's making clearance. But let's go through and put some bends in here as well. I'd like these tubes to be bent, not just like welded together. So I'm going to select these corners. And even though this is a 3D sketch, I can still go through and select these kind of mating lines and apply a fillet to those. I'm going to say a 3-inch bend radius. Okay. And let's say finish sketch. Let's get an idea for how this is all measuring up. And the clever tool I'm going to be using for this is the pipe tool, where I can just select that path that I just created, define exactly what I want that material to be, whether I want that to be hollow or not. And in this case, I do, say 0.1. And then we don't want that to cut, but we actually would like that to be a new body. Say okay. And yeah, that's looking pretty darn good. I can go through here at this point and ensure that we are clear of those body panels. It looks like we are. That looks nice. All right, well, let's keep going with this then. So I'm going to go back into my sketch. Excellent thing with the timeline, right? I can go forward and start creating geometry, but I want to go back to that original sketch and continue adding to it. It's as easy as just double clicking on it. So from here, I'm going to add something like a crossbar so it can connect each edge. And then I'd also like to add a support out in this direction to the right. But I also like to have that bend kind of back towards the bodywork. So maybe we'll pull this back. Let's see here. I'll extend this out a little bit. And you know what? I think I made a mistake there. Let's try that again. Connect there, make sure I'm on the appropriate plane. Okay, good. Go to this top view here. That looks good. And actually, maybe I'll bend this up a little bit too. I think that'll look pretty cool. And maybe I'll bring this whole plane back here. Make sure that's in line. Yeah, that looks good. And then maybe we'll also continue that line up into the corner here. Say finish. Let's go back to that pipe tool. Select that sketch that we just created. We're going to say join here. And yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe with this though, I'd like to actually have it bend back towards the bodywork a little bit more. It's flared out a little bit more than what I hoped. So I'm going to take a step back into this sketch and say remove this line. And we'll select that corner there. And let's try something like that. Now, let's try that again. Is that going where I'm thinking it's going? All right, that looks much better. I think I was selecting the wrong plane before. So let's try that. No, it's still giving me a hard time. What am I doing wrong? Give this one more shot here. And if I don't get it, I'll consider it a learning opportunity for myself. That's the fun thing working as a tech at Fusion 360 is we're constantly updating things, and you have to constantly start becoming an expert to brand new ideas or brand new concepts. And that can be hard sometimes. So as you can see here, this isn't, I'm not doing this perfectly. And there we go, that's exactly what I wanted. So let's say finish sketch. And I'm going to go through and turn that sketch back on. I'm going to use that pipe tool, select that geometry that we wanted. That looks great. Maybe I'd actually like to add a fillet to this connection here. So just that corner there, say 3-inch. So it's not that hard edge. Say finish sketch. Select that pipe tool again. Yeah, that looks perfect. See, all the hard work was worth it. All right, good. So now I think I could probably use a support connecting like this to this corner somewhere in between. I'm gonna go back into that sketch again. And this is so easy with 3D sketching. Like I can just select any point on this line here, any point on this line here, say finish, go through, select my pipe tool again. How easy is that? It just works so nice. And I like that a lot. And you can tell here that we're using that same process as I did before, where if we're creating something that's symmetrical, why do double the work when we can just duplicate it at the end? So let's go through and mirror this. That again will give us kind of a better idea of what we are designing. Let's not select this guy here. Press OK. And how about that? That looks pretty cool, actually. I like that a lot. And I've gone through and done this design, I don't know, 5 or 10 times, and I've made it a little bit different every single time. And I do that purposefully. I'm just waiting for like the one that looks right. And I actually really like that. That's pretty awesome. So maybe what I'll do from here is go through and combine these two bodies. So now that's just one piece. Maybe we'll actually go through here and add an appearance to this. So I intend this to be powder coated, and a smooth powder coating is usually what it's getting. Pretty simply, I can just drag that onto the materials that I want it to be associated with. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that a lot. A lot of these that I've seen online too also have kind of a cover over the front of it here. So yeah, let's go through and add that as well. I'm going to create another sketch. And we're going to use that projection tool that I used before. And we'll actually project maybe a previous sketch. We'll project some of these lines that I had created. That'll make this job a little bit easier. Can actually go through and project some of these other geometries, just so I have that for reference. We'll just start with that top one there. And I am going to draw a line from the start of that to, let's say, the bottom of that. And the easiest way I found to create something like this is using surfaces. So I'll actually use that line that I just created and extrude that out. But instead of just passing it through this object and trimming things away, what I'll do is decide where I am extruding to with this extent option. And I'll just say to object. And that does kind of all that heavy lifting for me. So I'll say OK. I'm actually going to go through and mirror this as well. We're getting very good at the mirroring tool through this project. Say OK. We can go through and stitch these two surfaces together, because as you can see right now, as I mirrored them, it's two separate pieces. That's not how I intend this to be manufactured. So I'm going to stitch those together. And then I'm also going to go through and thicken this. So I want this to be that same material thickness as what's below. I actually say symmetrical. And you know what? If we're doing it symmetrical, let's make sure it's the appropriate dimension. So there we go. We have that kind of like winch guard here. So there's not a whole lot of excitement in that. So let's add something else. So what we could do is, actually, let's start a sketch on that plane. And then let's insert an SVG. And so handily, I have the Autodesk logo here. Let's drag that up into place. Like that. That looks pretty good. And this is just something I think I pulled off of Google. I'd even have to create this. Now I'm going to go through and maybe delete some of these lines, because I don't want these cut into it. If this is going to ultimately be like plasma cut, this isn't going to help me out in any way. So I'm just going to select these lines I want to be removed. I think I see some little artifacts inside of here as well. Let's remove that too. And well, I imagine this would be floating or be hanging on by a very small piece of metal if this existed the way it does now. So maybe we'll round this out, give that a little bit of a room to attach to. Say finish. Go through and cut this through the part. And that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll go through and add some material to that as well. I'm pulling up that appearance menu just by pressing A on my keyboard. Big fan of hotkeys. How about that? That looks pretty darn good. And that was done super, super quick too, right? And again, at this point, really the whole intent of having this mesh behind it is without having to go out with like a measuring tape or physically have to touch anything, I have the exact bodywork of this really, really complex design already here that I can immediately reference. And yeah, I wasn't taking any direct measurement off of it, but I was creating some like aesthetic lines connecting like one piece to another. I can also see now that, oh wow, yeah, you know what, this is going to be a perfect clearance in between this bodywork here and my bumper. I don't have to go through and practically make this and then realize, oh, you know what, this support member, it's at the wrong angle. Let's go back and scrap that entire design and start over. Here, I have it, and it works. And you can use this for so many other things. I just saw recently a company making the interior roll cage for like 1,000 horsepower Supra and use this exact same methodology for design. So yeah, take this and run with it, right? It doesn't have to be the front end of a UTV. It can be used for anything. So yeah, I hope you guys like this. I hope this was something that kind of sparked a new design process for you and also introduced you to a new tool. But again, that's really most of what I wanted to show you guys here today. Sorry, I'm getting used to OBS here. I switched between 3 screens, but thank you again. My second live stream ever. I'm really happy to be here, and I think I'm going to be doing quite a bit more in the future. So I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this project in the comments. But other than that, have a great day. Everyone stay safe and talk to you soon.